Hi, I'm Dirk De Smaele. I'm calling in here from cold and chilly Belgium to talk to Simanje about a couple of important topics that are near and dear to my heart, which is leadership, transformation of people on the journey they're on, entrepreneurship, and so on. And the reason why that's relevant and important to me is that after 28 years of a career in the pharmaceutical R&D, I decided to change career and become a leadership coach and trainer. So very much looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much for sharing a bit about that. I have to thank you very much for that. And you actually mentioned something which basically I think we just gonna have to dive into first, which is you were in the pharmaceutical space, right? For a
Mhm,
while, right? For for
mhm.
for for a very long time actually, you know. So I think that is where we will have to first start, right? So can you please tell us a bit about your journey to leading R&D at J&J, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, and what was your initial vision, and how did it evolve over those 28 years?
yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Actually, I would like to start my story much earlier than the career and go back to a 6-year-old boy born in
Okay.
Belgium, who was very curious about how the world worked and how science was working in nature, biology, chemistry, everything was of interest to me. And so that's kind of how I showed up on this globe. And the reason that I do that, Simanye, is I think it's important for every one of us to kind of reflect on who we were at that young age. And the reason why it's important is because at that time, we're still not contaminated, if you want, or not shaped by expectations from education, supervisors, parents, and so on. So to reflect on that allows you to go back to who you really are or were at that time, what your beliefs were, what your interests and passions are.
Okay.
So logically, with that type of profile, I went into school focused on science, on chemistry, and what have you. And it was still this one moment that I remember where I was 17, 18 years old, where the chemistry teacher was teaching us organic chemistry, and he said, "This is what they do in pharmaceutical R&D." And he showed us a molecule, an organic molecule, and he said they change these molecules, and then that's how they discover drugs, medicines. All right, like that's cool. I had absolutely no clue what he was talking about because I didn't know how they change these molecules and how they actually know that the molecules were the shape they thought they were and so on. But it just kind of landed with me like, wow, I want to do that.
Okay.
I went into chemistry, into university, got my PhD, and then luckily I was able to, as you mentioned, join J&J, one of the biggest healthcare companies, and I could do that on a campus at a site which was within driving distance from my home. So happy camper all over the place. I was so grateful that I could start this job. And then yeah, it evolved. I did my best, and I was a scientist. I didn't really qualify as a good scientist. There were people in the company that were much more smarter than me, and so I had to kind of look for my own way and build on my strengths, which apparently was more around leadership. But I didn't know that when I joined the company. Absolutely not. And then there's one moment again, which is kind of a moment where you have these important insights. And that was at the time that I was assigned responsibility to develop a drug to treat HIV. Up to that moment, I was still working or had been working in the lab or leading small groups. But by virtue of leading that team, I got in contact with the patient side.
Okay.
I started to understand like, hey, there are patients on the other side here, and I am contributing, no matter how small my contribution is, I'm contributing to a healthier life for those patients. And in that case, in the case of HIV, it meant a difference between life or death. I mean, we're talking many, many years ago. Today, that's not the case anymore for HIV. It has become more of a chronic disease. But at that moment in time, it was still a death sentence when you were diagnosed with HIV.
Okay.
And that's like another moment where I was able to link my passion, my interest with purpose. It's like, this is why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And I think that's another takeaway here, for me to kind of share with you and the audience, is that whenever you're able to link your passion with a purpose, great things happen. And that's not different for me as it is for you. I mean, you're linking your passion as well, Simanya, with a purpose, and that's why you're doing what you're doing, and that's why you're so good at it, and that's why you like to do it. So that's kind of an important message or an important finding I'd like to share. And then, yeah, I climbed the corporate ladder. But I think for the sake of answering your question, it's like that's where the most important learning happened for me. If I, as a leader, continue to link my own purpose with the company's purpose and share that with my organization, that's an important element of my job as a leader.
I think, first of all, I have to say this, which is, I think there's one thing that in most industries or in most companies that tends to happen. You know, sometimes you get to see the face of the company, but
Mhm.
you do not tend to see the people at the background, the people that are making things move, the people that are operating, the people that are doing things on the background, you know. And as I'm saying this because you actually mentioned something which I think a lot of us tend to notice. And just let me just get back to what you were saying, which is when you started, you didn't see yourself in the leadership space. You
Mhm.
did not, you know, it wasn't something that you thought you would do.
Mhm.
And then when you were given an opportunity to show yourself, that's when that thing came into you, which is this is something that you could actually do, and possibly you saw that you're good at this, you know. And you mentioned something which is there were some scientists which you might say that they were they were they were good, you know, they were more better than you, but
Mhm.
you know, but at the very same time, throughout all of that, you got to see that I'm good, you know, in terms of leadership. And 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 now I truly believe that even now that's where you are strongly focusing on, right? And back to what I was actually, and that this I have to also say. I will say quite a lot of things, but I will try to make sure that I summarize all of them, you know. So I think first of all, I think that is it's something that not a lot of us tend to notice. And within every single one of us, there is a leader, you know,
Mhm.
there is a leader, but you have to search for that leader. You
Mhm.
have to bring out that leader. If you do not bring out that leader won't show. With everything in life, if you do not go out there and find it, it will not show up. So you went out there and you actually got it. So I think that is something that a lot of people need to learn from you, you know, and from a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders out there, you know, which is you need to go out there, and when you go out there, you try to find it, you will actually find it. But if you do not, you will not find it. So that is actually something that is amazing. And I had to
Yeah.
actually say that, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and you summarized it very well. And I think what you're referring to is like everybody has a personal leadership component. And leadership doesn't mean that you have to climb the hierarchy and be in charge of 2,000 people. The personal
Exactly.
leadership can be that you're on your own, on a journey, and trying to make this world a better place, do good, and you can do that on your own. You can do that in the context of a team. You can do that in the context of an organization, but you're absolutely right. You need to explore yourself what exactly that leadership component and those leadership qualities that you have, specifically you as an individual, and how you can make use of them. And that may look different for you than for me, and somebody else, and that's perfectly fine.
That is absolutely true. And I think one person that summarized it very well, it wasn't me, but it was you. You know, you actually said it the way that I wanted to say that, and you said it pretty well, you know. Uh, it's something that is very true. So for that,
Mhm.
I have to commend you for actually getting deep into that part, you know. And also, R&D is known for its challenges and also uncertainties, right? But now a question that I have for you
Mhm.
is, how did you maintain the resilience within your teams, and how did you actually keep them motivated through high stakes projects?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I don't know, maybe you have some insight into how pharmaceutical R&D is operating because not everyone recognizes how tough of a job it actually is. You're solving very tough scientific problems. You need to innovate like crazy. You're doing a lot of things, most of which don't deliver the expected outcome, which we could call failures. The positive way, we'd say it's learning opportunities. It takes forever. So it can take between 6 to 10 years before you get a drug on the market. It costs billions of dollars. And then you have to generate all the data, and the authorities need to give you approval for the fact that you can actually treat patients with it. So it's a very complex and long journey. And so that's why your question is so relevant also to leadership, because in that process, you need to make sure that there's, I think, a couple of things. First thing that comes to mind is what we talked about, the purpose. You need to link what those people are doing, what the teams are doing, to their purpose and the purpose of the company. That's like your long-term driver, your long-term goal that you have there. Like, despite all the failures and the drawbacks and so that drawbacks that we have and so on, or the setbacks, sorry, um, we're here for a specific purpose. The other important element is you need to create an atmosphere and a culture of trust and safety, because you want people to speak up, you want people to share their thoughts, you want people to take risks and try something without them being afraid that if it goes wrong, that you will punish them and they will suffer from it. You need to empower your people to take decisions because it's so complex. There's so many teams and disciplines involved that you can't control everything. You need to just kind of make sure that people connect, and then they need to do the right thing, whatever according to them the right thing is. So that level of trust and safety is extremely important. And then the last thing, if I may, to connect and to communicate, because you're working with human beings. You're working with scientists, okay, but they're human beings as well, and um, they want to connect. We're wired to connect. Every human being wants to connect. What we're doing now here is connecting. We like it because we like to connect with each other. You need to give the opportunity for them to connect with each other, and to communicate. Scientific profiles, they tend to have a desire to understand everything, know everything, to ask questions and to challenge. And you kind of need to create that context which allows them to do that. And if you allow them to do that, they will thrive. They will give it their best shot. They will stay with this company and not go somewhere else. Um, so those are the three things that come to mind: purpose, safety, and then connect and communicate.
Okay. And also, just to what you've mentioned right now, uh, I think one thing that connects them is is culture, basically, is that you need to build a culture within the organization. So
Mhm.
because with and one thing that a lot of people tend to not understand is, you may have a culture, but it may be a bad culture, which, when you have a bad culture, it doesn't help in terms of growing. the company. Instead, it demolishes the whole thing that you're trying to build, you know.
Hmm.
So what you were saying, according to how I understand it, you need to build a good culture within your organization. You need to make sure that every person that you have in the company, you try to make sure that, first of all, you need to know that they are human.
Hmm.
And as they are humans, they make mistakes.
Hmm.
And as they make mistakes, you shouldn't judge them, but you should understand one thing, which is failing is good as
Hmm.
long as they get to learn from it.
Hmm.
If they do not learn from it, that's where it starts to be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that is something that is very important, especially as you mentioned in the leadership space, as a leader. It's something that is important, which is you need to try and make sure that your people are all taken care of. You try to, of course, as I did mention before, they make mistakes, but you shouldn't judge them. But you should try to at least keep them accountable, you know. And that, again, I have to say, it's something that is very important. So thank you very much for actually diving into that, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's something that is very important.
Yeah. If I may, Simanya, I mean, listening to you spark a thought here, which is important. The reason that I was able to go through this journey is because somebody else allowed me to do exactly what you just summarized: make mistakes, recover from them, being given opportunities, create a culture where I can thrive. So you see, it's it's a logical sequence. I am, you are, we are the product of what others allowed us to do, encouraged us to do. And at one moment in time, we take over the responsibility and we do the same thing for others. And that's how the wheel keeps on turning.
True.
So there's a component of gratitude in there as well, that whatever we achieve is not only a result of our own talent, ambition, character, and so on, it also is a result of what other people allowed us to do and how they supported us and forgave us all the things, the stupid things that we did along the way.
True. That is true. And when that happens, you did mention something, which is when you build a good culture, it 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 becomes very hard for the people that you have in your company to actually leave, you know. And something that I tend to see a lot, sometimes you would see that there are people in an organization which are not paid that well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys, you can offer them a better offer than what they are actually getting in terms of capital, but they can actually reject it, you know. And that happens because there's a good culture. Those guys, they see that they're actually valued in the company, in the organization. And when they see that that they are valued, they think a lot before they can make a decision of moving. As much as let's say they're gonna increase the capital or they're gonna increase the paycheck, but if they can actually wake up in the morning, they feel happy to go to work. Now they have to move to another person, which now that person, they are not certain if things will actually go the way that they were going this side. Which is, you need to treat the people that are in your organization good.
Yeah,
You need to value them.
true. But even then, if people would decide to leave, you need to, as a leader, also respect that and say, I equipped you with all the capabilities, the skills, and I supported you, which allows you now maybe to move on and do something else somewhere else. And let that go at that moment, but I also recognize that you were part of the person. If the person does it out of a positive opportunity, if somebody runs away because it's a mess inside, that's a different thing. Then shame on you as a leader. But if despite all your efforts, people still leave, okay, then you did your job as a leader as well. So it's a little bit ambiguous from that perspective.
Okay. And I think it's another way of looking at it, which is, how can I put it? It actually shows that you are a very good leader, because not a lot of leaders would actually do that. When someone in their organization leaves, they they would have that thing inside of them, which is, this person actually left the organization. You know, this person, we've equipped them with this knowledge, with these skills, but they still left. You know, so what you've actually mentioned, that I think it's something that is very important, which is, as a leader, sometimes people will stay, sometimes people will go, and you
Mm-hmm.
need to acknowledge that,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to show that person, even though they are leaving, let's say because of something that is positive,
Mm-hmm.
but you understand that, and you thank them for everything that they've done for the
Yeah.
organization, because they were part of the organization, they were part of getting it to where it is, you know. So I think that is something that is very important, which you've actually just said right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that is really important. And now, another thing that I have to which is, you are now actually in the leadership coaching, right? And
Mm-hmm.
consulting space. What actually inspired you to make that shift from being an R&D, R&D leadership, from being that, and then to becoming a leadership coach and consultant, was there a defining moment that actually led you to that transition?
Yeah. 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 It's of course, as I mentioned in the introduction, a very relevant question, because you could look at it very objectively and say, hey, you were an executive, great job, great company. Why on earth would you even consider changing your path? And while I'm going to explain to you how that happened, it may sound as if this is a very logical process, very strategic, conscious. You connect the dots and A happens and then B comes. That's not how it works, at least not for me. It
Mhm.
was a mess. It was a messy process, confusing. Sometimes two steps forward, one step back, or maybe two steps backwards. But so I just want to caution that whoever listens to this story and says, wow, that's kind of a very logical sequence of events, that's only in hindsight that I'm able to construct or reconstruct that. Uh, One, to answer your question on the particular moment that things started to change in my mind is, there's a book out there by David Brooks called The Second Mountain. And I think the subtitle is The Quest for a Moral Life. You know it?
No, I do not know it.
Okay, I recommend
Yeah.
reading it. The Quest for a Moral Life. So he talks about how we typically have in our life, including our professional career, a first mountain that we climb, and then there's typically a second mountain. And we go from a more egocentric point of view and living to a more community-based point of view. But there's a section in there in the book where he talks about the insecure overachiever. And when I read it, it started to resonate with me. And it took me some time. But an overachiever is somebody who wants to be very successful, time after time, do the best job possible. And then you get rewarded for that. Now, the impact or the effect of that reward is only temporary. So, what do? You go through another cycle of being successful and doing the best job possible because you get another reward. So this is a dopamine cycle. This is an addictive cycle that you end up in, right? So you do something,
Mhm.
you get rewarded, and then the problem is the insecure part, which makes you depend on external validation. you expect others to tell you how good you are. And in absence of that message, you start to doubt yourself whether you're as good as you would like to be or hope to be. Hence, you look for this external validation of others. So that's the cycle. And then, as I started to think about it, and I know you have a podcast with, what's his name, Tim Wagner? Is
Sorry.
that
Oh yeah,
was it Tim Wagner?
team. Yeah, teamwork.
Tim,
Yeah.
yeah. So he had kind of went through a somewhat similar, and maybe people have seen the podcast already. For me, it was kind of similar but different, because for me there was this additional awareness of there's an ego that is at play here, and that ego told me like, "Hey, Dirk, you're doing a good job. You're getting bigger titles, you're getting bigger organizations, you're getting bigger paychecks. It allows you to buy fancy stuff. Please continue. I want you to climb even higher, make more money, and buy more fancy stuff. That's what I want you to do." And that's the ego talking. To the extent that your ego, or my ego, is willing to throw my health under the bus. And the ego says, I'm willing to sacrifice your physical health and your emotional well-being just for the purpose of getting what I want. Success, respect, being, well, rich and famous would be a little bit over. I'm not Taylor Swift or something, but you know what I mean. That's kind of
Yeah.
the message. And that was an important insight, but I said it took a while. Now, if you come to that insight, or if I come to that insight, there's two ways I could react here. One way could be like, how on earth is this possible? Who can I blame here? Who is at the root cause of the situation I ended up in? And I could say, well, I blame my parents for the way they raised me. I blame the education system because of the competition. I blame the company. I can blame supervisors. But all of that is totally irrelevant. I could even blame myself and say, hey, Dirk, you're such a loser. How is it possible that you end up in this situation, right? But that doesn't really make a difference because it's not relevant. The thing is, what I did at that moment in time throughout those 20 plus years
Yeah.
was the best thing I could do to the best of my abilities with all the knowledge that I had. I didn't have this insight of the ego and the insecure overachiever, but now I had. And that means that at that moment in time, with that additional awareness, I have an opportunity to make choices. Either I go left, I stay, I go for more of it, or I go right, I do something else and start a new path of my career. And I chose going right to go through the change. But I could have chosen to stay and do more of it. The only thing I needed to be aware of is that I would need to face the consequences of that choice that I made, as much as I'm facing the consequences of the choice I made and the life I'm living now.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? There's like it's being unaware and it's becoming aware and then making choices and owning the accountability and the consequences, intended and unintended consequences of that choice. Does that resonate with you, Sumaya?
It definitely does. It definitely does. Because I think I've also been in that specific uh moment or in that specific point in my life, you know. So it definitely does. And I don't know if I did mention this to you when we actually had a call, which is on my side, basically for me to get to where I am, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh I did mention it, right? Which is I started at a point where I was just a very shy person trying to get myself out there, and trying to find myself at the very same time, because at the time, basically, I grew up with my mother and didn't have a father in my life, so was trying to actually find myself and just trying to get that other side that I felt like I was missing in my life. And the more I
Mm-hmm.
kept on finding myself, and I was still in high school at the time. The more I kept on finding myself, the more I decided to actually quit school, you know.
Mhm.
So on my side, I actually didn't finish with my school.
Mhm.
I didn't finish high school because I was in high school then. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in South Africa, we basically have grade R to grade 12, right? And then if let's say you're in grade 9, you have the chance of going to, let's say, to college,
Mhm.
not university, but to college, you know.
Mhm.
So I basically went to college, and then
Mhm.
in college I actually was studying for IT, you know.
Mhm.
And while I was there, I was actually learning to start my company, you know. So I think just to get back to what you were asking, the reason why on my side I would say I resonate with that, it's because I've had to make a lot of choices, you know, throughout my journey. Even now, I still have to make choices that are very hard, you know, choices
Mhm.
that if I do not make, of course, I can either go this side and be comfortable on this side, or I can choose to be on this side and be very uncomfortable on this side. You know, I have a choice, you know, you have a choice to choose to be on the side where everything can basically go smoothly, you know, or you can be on the side where things are your mind needs to constantly be all over the place. You need to constantly think about things. You need to constantly try to find a way to make sure that this doesn't you know, you have to always find that thing. So basically I've been at a point where I've had to choose whether I stay at a comfortable side or a very uncomfortable side. And every single time I always choose the uncomfortable side, you know. So I think that actually resonates with me a lot because I've been at that point where I've had to do a lot of things that I think if I didn't do, I would have been at a good place in my life. But I do know that that wouldn't have been me,
Yeah.
you know. And that side, I guess it's not a side that, oh, I normally tell myself this thing, which is in everything that I do, I need to remember that in the next few years, like for instance, I gave myself this thing, which is at least at 24, I
Mhm.
want to actually have a little simanya, you know. So I actually gave myself that. Now,
Okay.
when I actually bring this little simanya, you know, I need this guy to when he sees his father, you know, I want him to be like, I want to be like my father, you know. I want to be that person that he can actually or she can actually look at and be like, this is who I want to become, you know?
Mhm.
And basically having to do that simply means that you have to take certain decisions that it's a certain decision that I think you can choose to, as I did say, to be on the comfortable side, you know, do what every person does, or you
Mhm.
can choose to do what nobody actually or 1% of people actually do, you know. And I tell myself every single day that those decisions they will actually they they will play a huge role, you know, in every single thing that I do, you know. And also just to mention this again, uh I think I did mention it to you though when we were having a conversation, which is basically on my side I've been having this idea of building a village, you know. Uh, basically just having a foundation where I'll build a village. So some people might call it an orphanage, you know, but
Mhm.
there was actually I think the episode of me and her, it's she's Iona, right? Our interview is going to drop just before your interview, right?
Mhm.
So she said to me, do not call it an orphanage because why call it an orphanage when they have people that care about them? Because you care about you care about them, the people that you will bring, they will care about them. So do not call it an orphanage. So I've been having this idea of actually it's no longer an idea because I'm actually now looking for the land, you know. So the idea is to actually have, let's say, a 200 hectares, and that's basically the land that I've been looking for, 200 hectares of land, you know, build a huge school, build a home, you know, a home for where they can stay. You have a farmland, you have sports ground, you have studios where there can be music, you have halls, you know, and the whole idea of this is that there's one thing that I tend to notice, which is within South Africa or within all over the world, actually, you know, I feel like a lot of people are not given a lot of people do not get to certain points in their lives, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
they did not get the opportunity, or they did not get uh that chance, or they did not, how can I actually put it? They did not get the necessary things that could have actually helped them to get to a
Mm-hmm.
certain point. Like for instance, as I mentioned, to have a farmland where there can be animals, there can be crops, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There are some of them that maybe will end up being entrepreneurs. They'll run their own farms. Now I'm giving them the necessary tools. I'm giving them a land where they can actually do that. They sell it. The money that comes through, it helps to take care of them, to buy everything. Also, we finance it. There are also the studios, you know, where there are some kids that actually that can sing, you know. Now, when you give them that opportunity to do that, you know, you're actually helping them to learn how to, let's say, control their voices, so on and so forth. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for sports, so some kids they end up, let me just say it like that, they end up going into drugs and so on and so forth because in their minds they are that thing of, I did not get the opportunities. But if
Mm-hmm.
now you can actually build up a village where you provide a home, you give them all the necessary tools, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the labs on how to, let's say, learn IT, how to make money online, all of these things. So that's been something that I've been also wanting to do. And so basically now the decision that I always take, I take them looking at the future, and I have people that I think at the end of the day, I want them to, when they look at me, I want them to see me as the person that they want to become, or they want to, you know. So I guess that's what I actually what makes me take certain decisions in my life, you know. But it's something that I fully understand, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Simanya, and I told you this before, I have to repeat it. What you're doing is leadership next level.
Thank you.
You don't, you know, but you don't only have a vision, but you execute on the vision, and you make these choices, not always the easiest choices, but
True.
you make choices that you believe are in line with your vision. And I mean, we talked about earlier when I said when people leave for the right reasons and so on, some of these people that you work with and these kids that you will work with, some of you will maybe continue it, some of them will continue to work with you, others will go other places, and you will be feel perfectly fine about that. And maybe many years later on, you will reconnect again in other contexts and
Mm.
so on. So that's how you will leave a legacy. And basically what you're doing is you're scaling your talent by sharing your talent with many people who will benefit from this many generations after that, because what you're doing is not for one generation, this
Mm.
is multiple generations, because you're right, not everybody starts at the same start line of the race that we call life. Some start with an advantage and some start with a disadvantage, and you're kind of recognizing and a brutal way of looking at it would say, hey, it doesn't really matter if you're starting a little bit ahead or behind. Life will level it out. That's
Yeah.
not how it works. If you
Mm.
start behind, you need to work extremely hard to keep up. let alone that you're able to catch up. And what you're doing there is allow people to catch up. So very inspiring. I get goosebumps about it when I listen to your story.
Thank you very much for actually saying that. And also I think the way that you actually put it, it is another, for the second time I'm saying this, which is on my side, I think I'm not yet good at summarizing things, but I can see that uh, from the 28 years, um, you know, it's there, you know, and I'm seeing it. It's definitely there, you know.
Before we know it, ChatGPT will do this for me or for you. So you don't need old guys for me to summarize stuff.
And that is actually true.
Yeah.
That is true. And also, you know, you've actually emphasized the importance of a psychological safety, authenticity, and also collaborating, you know.
Mhm.
So on that front, could you share an example of how these principles have helped you, you know, navigate a challenging situation with your team?
Mhm. Um, well, first of all, again, in all humbleness, I'm not this guru sitting on a mountain sharing and spreading his wisdom because he claims to know everything. Right? I'm just a guy trying to do the best job possible. Okay, we talked about the insecure overachiever. Here he is again. Um, but I think if I reflect on it, a lot of what I had to focus or focused on as a leader was how help my team to deal with conflict. And as said, I mean, I painted the picture of the context of R&D. It's challenging, it's difficult, and so on. You're working with very smart people, the best scientists that you can find in that space. And there's a lot of unknowns, which is the ideal garden for conflict. Because people tend to say that they know how it works, and other people disagree. And you have to kind of, as a leader, get the best out of it. You could say, well, I'm going to ignore conflict. I'm going to pretend that it's not there. We just kind of tiptoe around it and we pretend as if everything is perfectly fine, but that's not how it works. It's there. And it's not by not talking about it that it's gone away. Or you could, and that's what some leaders also tend to do, is you stimulate the conflict. And then you have people jumping in both feet and they use the conflict to vent their frustration or disappointment. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire, and the fire becomes even higher. And that's not a good thing either, because once you had that argument, you may think like, I'm going back to my office and my lab. You know what? Next week or the week thereafter, you will need to meet again. And then there's this history from last week that the scratches on your back, and you can't just say, oh, we forget about it. That's not how it works. So a lot of what I had to do is create a safe space, as you say, for people to use conflict, disagreement as a way to learn for themselves, to learn from others, and to maybe come up with a better solution that they could come up with if they would look at the problem on their own. So it's like using conflict or potential conflict and disagreement as a construct to come up with better ideas without jeopardizing the quality of the relationship. And that's the key element. If you're able to do that as a leader, and I grew into it, I wasn't good at it at the start. I grew into it. And, you know, I was surprised because I didn't know it myself, but I think it also is an important thing I would like to share. The way we are wired as a human being is we look at the world. So I think I look at the world as it is. I think this is the world. This is what I see. This is what I know is happening and why it's happening. And I bet you, Simanye, that if both of us look at the world, both of us have different interpretations of what actually is going on.
True.
We don't have this objective view of the world. We have a very subjective view of the world, even if we're faced with the same facts.
True.
So what happens is I look at the world through my own belief system. If I think that the world is one big competitive space, the only thing I will see is competition. Even the talk that we're having now, if I am wired in a competitive way and I think like this is how the world operates, I could look at this conversation as a competition. Let's see who's the smartest here.
True.
So the mindset, me entering into this podcast could be like, okay, I'm going to show Semenya that I'm smarter, better than him, and we will not stop until that is made clear. If I think the world is about betrayal, my mindset and the way I look at things is through that lens of betrayal. And I start to see complots and paranoia. And it's like, what are people doing and why are they doing? Because, right? And then if I look at the world as an opportunity to collaborate and to learn from each other and jointly make something better, that's how I will look at the world. So making people see that their own belief system is not the single truth, but a belief system, and that there are others that they would need to explore and learn from is an important job. And to come back to your point, you are doing exactly the same thing. By virtue of taking on this task, this difficult task that you just described, you're telling friends, colleagues, you're telling your country that there's another way of looking at problems than to say it just happens and poor me, or we can't do anything about it. You're telling them there's a different way. And my belief system is, your belief system, Semenya, is that if I put effort and energy into it, I'm able to change something.
Sure.
And that's the strength of belief systems.
That is absolutely true. And I think you've mentioned something that is very important, which is how the way that you the way you view the world is how you actually is how everything, or let me just say it like this: the energy that you give out, it's what you're going to get back,
Excellent. Yeah.
you know? And that, I think, it's something that is very important, especially for entrepreneurs, especially for leaders, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you are a leader and you are in charge of actually running a team or running an organization, basically, how you actually you need to have your energy needs to, or let me say like this: you need to have good energy,
Mm-hmm.
because if you have bad energy, you will pass it down to the people that are in the organization, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a saying that I normally hear, which is one rotten potato will affect the others, or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think that is really true. So I think what you've mentioned there, it's something that is really, really important. So thank you very much for actually sharing that. So thank you very much for sharing that. And
Oh, my
also
pleasure.
another, sorry?
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Another thing, when you talk about unlocking a leader's potential, what does it look like in practical terms? How can leaders begin to process their own roles or in their own roles?
Yeah. I'm still thinking about the
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 question.
thing that no, not the question, the journey that you shared, because it's so impressive, and I'm trying to link what you're doing
What's of this?
with some of the key messages that I would like to share. Um, how do you unlock your leadership potential? I think first of all, to realize that it's a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. If you're working on finding your true leadership potential today, Semenya, I bet you that 10, 20 years from now, that will look different. But you will still have the mindset of exploring what exactly it is that you can do, because that's apparently the mindset that you have. So it's not like something you do over the weekend and say, okay, I just discovered my leadership potential, let's move on. It's a mindset throughout your life. you need to have.
True.
And a nice way of, is there something you want to comment on
No,
that,
you can
or?
continue. No, you can continue, no problem.
Okay. A very good question to ask yourself is, if I'm 80 years old or 90 or 110, it doesn't matter, and I tell the story of my life, what does that story look like? What happened there? What did I do? How does it feel? How does it sound? Right? And then take that story and kind of go back and bring it to today and see if this is what I would like to tell the little Simanyes and their kids, what Simanye's life was. This is what I need to do today, and this is how I need to grow myself into taking small steps towards that direction. You know, there are people who look at, for example, Steve Jobs as like, oh, he was a great leader and I want to be the next Steve Jobs. Reality is that most of us will not be Steve Jobs. And that's fine. I mean, Steve Jobs was Steve Jobs, and Simanye is Simanye, and Dirk is Dirk. It should stop us from dreaming. But at the same time, it's important that we take small steps and we recognize the small successes. And if it's not a success, we learn from it. Another thing that is important as you discover your leadership potential is to be nice to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Because if, as much as you will discover qualities, you will discover stuff that you don't have. Maybe you call it deficiencies and so on, but don't beat yourself up for that. Either you acquire them, or you say, this is not who I am. This is not a quality of mine, and I'm not going to focus on it. I'm going to look for somebody else. For example, as you build your company, I'm going to look for somebody who has that type of quality. True. And then we become complementary, right?
Yeah.
And it's important that you have that kind of emotional maturity to look at yourself without judging yourself, to go into the extreme of I'm the next Steve Jobs and I'm a winner and I'm going to change the world, but also not go to the other extreme and I'm a failure and I may as well stop because this is not going to work. So just have to kind of learn. And as I said, it's a journey. And the most important thing that you can do to learn is not only talk to yourself and learn from yourself, is go out there and get feedback and support from others. Because if you're open to feedback and you ask for help, which as a leader is a strength, sometimes people think that a leader should not ask for help because that puts him or her in a weak position. That's absolutely wrong. If you ask for help, you will learn and you will get better and stronger.
True. And I think another thing that I would have to, I don't know if I can say add to it.
Sure.
Or I can say, but just to what you actually mentioned, I think it's something that is really, really important. And just to add to it, as you mentioned something, which is that, let's say in my journey, right? You could say that uh in everything that I do, I'm doing it for let's say for the next generation, right? When let's say I'm 94, what do I want the generations to follow to say this is what actually made us who we are, and this is what we need to learn from Simanye, And I think that is something that is really important, because we tend to forget that at times, which is, as much as we can do quite a lot of things in our prime, but there is a next generation that is actually coming. And as there is a next generation that is coming, one thing that we need to always think about is that what lessons are we leaving behind for them in whatever that we were doing? You know, are we
Hmm.
leaving good things behind, or are we leaving bad things for them to follow?
Hmm.
Which I think is something that is very important. And especially, again, especially if you are a leader or an entrepreneur, or even if you just someone that, let's say, is working a 9 to 5 or something. But that is something that I believe we need to look at a lot in everything that we do. Are you, as you are doing it, you need to think about what what should your child, what should your grandchildren learn from the decisions that you were taking? You know, even when you're giving them advice at the very same time, what advice, are you going to give them good advice? And the advice that you're going to be giving them, where are you actually going to be getting it? Are you taking it from your experience, or are you just saying something that you've never done, and you expect
Hmm.
them to also you expect them to do something that you've never done, you know? So I think that is something that is very important, and I feel like I had to actually say that
Yeah,
because I
you're
I think
absolutely.
y- you're saying.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, because I think it's something that we we do not tend to look at a lot, you know, but I think it's something that we need to look at a lot, you know. So thank you very much for actually diving into that.
Yeah. And the reason that you feel so strongly about this, Simanya, is because it's part of your belief system. It's like and I can feel it, I can hear it. This is you. You're not
Yeah,
saying this because you read it somewhere that it's important to you. It's really you, and that's how you will be successful in your journey. It actually reminds me, if I may, of a small story, but how leadership can work and what kind of effect it can have. And it's something I read in a book, and I hope it's true. But at the time that NASA was planning to put a man on the moon, with Kennedy being the president, he was visiting some of the NASA facilities, and there was a guy mopping the floor, cleaning the floor, and it was late. And Kennedy asked him, like, "Why are you working so late here, cleaning the floor?" And the guy said, "Mr. President, I'm not cleaning the floor here. I'm helping here to put a man on the moon." So, talking about culture, leadership, and so on, that's how far that vision of what we're doing got into the organization, that up to and including the person who cleaned the floor was absolutely convinced and believed that he was or she was helping to put a man on the moon. And if you can inspire your organization with that type of mindset, well, you can put a man on the moon apparently.
true, true. That is, and I think I've heard it before. I don't know where I've heard it from, but I've heard it before, you know. And if you can build an organization in that manner where even a person that, let's say, a janitor, they believe in what you are trying to achieve, and they feel like
Mhm.
they're part of it. If if
Mhm.
if you can do that, then you need to know that you've succeeded, you know.
Absolutely.
You need to. And I think it goes back to something that I was saying, which is it sometimes it gets to a point where people, they let's say someone could work in a certain position in another company, right? And you can try to get that person, let's say that person is getting paid, let's say $10,000 a month, you know,
Mhm.
and you can come to that person, let's say for 50 a month. That person, let's say they reject that amount, you know, because of the culture that, and because they believe in what is being done in that organization. So I think if you can get to that point, I don't know what you think, but I think that's when you can start saying that, okay, now I'm seeing that I'm actually, what I was trying to achieve, this is it, you know. I
Yeah.
don't know what you think about that.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't come for free. And that's where, as a leader, you need to be aware of the impact that you should have which doesn't stop at the next level reporting to you or a couple of, no, it's the entire company, no matter how small or big it is, and no matter what people are doing, whether they're the CFO or the person who does the cleaning after hours. It's your company, it's your people. And I think it's an important element that as a leader, you need to understand that you're in a very privileged position because you're working and impacting people's lives. Those people who are working with you, for you, in your company. And it doesn't stop when they leave office. I mean, if they're good people and your company is good and you're a good leader, they take work home and they take also home into the work environment. But it's absolutely important that you realize that it is a privilege and that you need to handle it with care because you're playing around with people's lives and yeah, I'm just mentioning it because there are for sure examples out there of people who forget that is also part of their responsibility.
True. You need you need to know your people. You need to. Some people tend to say this, and I think it's something that also I try to make sure that I achieve, which is the people in your organization, right? You need to try and treat them the way that you would want someone to treat, let's say, your children,
Yeah.
or treat them like family, you know. And of course, in a family, there tends to be some disagreements at time,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of it all, they need to they need to be resolved,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, but on my side, that's just how I tend to look at it, because if you treat them like family, and I know sometimes it doesn't work for some people, but I think that's just how I try to make sure that I handle it, treat them like family. Of course, as I did say, there are certain disagreements that will be there, but of course, all that what matters is it's basically how you get to resolve it, you know?
Yeah. And what keeps you together as a family, because it's a great comparison, is that there is a fabric, there's an understanding of trust and a quality of a relationship that overcomes the disagreements that you have. Right? If you have a disagreement in your family, your first initial response would not be to run away from the family and go look for another family because it's family. So you need to do the same in your company, that there's like, it's safe, you trust, and yes, there's bump in the roads, but long term, you understand each other and you will work it out as you've done in the past and as you will do in the future. And that's an important role you have to play as a leader.
True. That is absolutely true. And also, uh, I'm going to have to because I can see that we've actually took a lot of we went over the hour. So I'm just gonna ask you just three questions, you know.
Okay.
Just gonna ask you three questions and then I think that should be about it.
Okay.
Okay. So now another question, which is basically in your experience, what makes a high performing team truly thrive? Are there any particular strategies that you've used, to encourage collaboration and accountability in your teams?
Yeah. And I'll keep it short then. Um, Very briefly, and actually this comes to the core what I actually do in real life and what we do together with my business partner. So that's relatively straightforward for me to answer is like mindset. Do you have a mindset as a team leader and member to collaborate and to prioritize long-term relationship over short-term gains? Second, do you create an atmosphere as a team and a team leader where things can be discussed and people listen to each other and also feel heard? Like, I think in this conversation, I felt heard. I hope you felt heard in terms of what you were
Definitely.
able. So that's kind of openness. Third, invest into self-awareness of your team leader and team people? Do they know why they're doing things? And that goes back, for example, to the belief system we talked about and so on. So do they know why they're doing the things that they're doing and how they land with others, how they leave an impression, positive or negative, with others? Fourth, do they take accountability for the choices that you have? We talked about it, right? And then fifth, if the conflict arises, do you kind of have a methodology that allows you to take people in the team through this conflict or this negotiation so that at the end you get a solution, you get an answer, but it doesn't jeopardize the team cohesiveness, the team trust, and so on. So those are the 5 principles in short to answer your question. And we covered many of those actually throughout the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for actually sharing that. And of course, due to the time, I can't also dive deep into it. Uh, Another question for new aspiring leaders,
Mm-hmm.
what are essential skills that they should focus on, you know? And or let me just say, what skills should they focus on developing, And especially in today's rapidly evolving business world, which skills should they actually focus on?
Yeah. First, I think it's important for any leader to be true to yourself, to be authentic. Because if you're not authentic as a leader, it's very exhausting. It requires a lot of energy to pretend to be somebody that you're not. And I can feel, for example, that you're an authentic leader, no doubt. The second thing is also, if you're not authentic, people pick that up and go like, I don't know, this guy is just pretending. I don't know if I trust. And suddenly the relationship is a totally different dimension. So authenticity is extremely important. The second thing, to your point on the fast change that we're going through, is you need to check your assumptions. What are my assumptions here that I think is going on? And is it the right set? Should I be talking to other people to find out if there are other things that I should know, other assumptions? And maybe I misunderstood something or I came to the wrong conclusion because I thought something was true that is not true. So go through this rapid cycle of checking your assumptions by talking to others, by educating yourself, and so on. And don't get stuck into a fixed mindset of this is how it is. And my main mission is to convince others that this is my reality and this is the truth, because you're going to get yourself into trouble and you don't know everything, right? So the humbleness is important. And then the last thing, and I'm kind of need to kind of prioritize because there's a lot of things that come to mind. To learn and adapt. Learn fast and adapt fast. And if you have a fixed mindset, it's going to be very difficult because by the time you think you understand everything, the world has moved on and you need to catch up. So that's a little bit. I could go on for hours about this topic, so I'll shut up now.
And also now, the last question, as you continue in your journey as a leadership coach,
Mm-hmm.
what's your ultimate vision or hope
Mm-hmm.
for the impact you want to make with your clients and the leaders you mentor?
Yeah, two things. I want them to learn from my mistakes. So my vision is to avoid that people go through the same things that I had to learn the hard way and do that as early as possible for them in their career. And the second thing is, my vision is that I want to help as many people to get to their, what I call thriving goal. You find your thriving goal, but some people are still stuck in a survival mindset. I need to survive life here. Okay, what is your thriving goal and how do I take you from surviving to thriving? And if I do that, I hope that I can inspire as many people as possible to contribute to a better world and do that one person at a time.
Okay. Thank you very much for actually mentioning that. And now is there anything that you would want to mention with our listeners, you know, uh, possibly regarding your, let's say your program or any offer that you might happen to have at the moment, or just any advice that you would want to give them?
Yes. So, well, the company that I work for or in is called a transformational journey. And I do that together with a business partner who is actually the founder of the company, Malou Lores. And you can find all of those details. And I'm sure we will find or put the link somewhere to the website.
Yeah.
And also then I think my main way to connect with the outside world is through LinkedIn. I'm not on these fancy platforms like TikTok and so on. That's like that's not my strength, so I give up on that. But that's kind of the website and LinkedIn. And there's on the website actually there's a couple of free things that we offer, freebies to learn about what we talked about here, defensive patterns, limiting patterns, so people can just subscribe and get information for free and see if it lands with them.
Okay. No, that sounds good. That sounds good. So I want to thank you for being part of this podcast and for being our guest. You know, you've shared a lot of value in this episode. And a matter of fact, we actually took up more time that we should have because of the value that you're actually bringing, you know. So I want to thank you very much for that. I thank you, and I hope that the listeners they will get a lot of value from it. And as you mentioned, you do have there's a website that we're gonna be leaving on the description. So
Mhm.
in that website or on the website, there is the information which I hope our listeners will learn from. I hope they will go there and they will learn from that information. And I hope they don't just and this is something that I tend to notice a lot. People they read and then they leave, but they don't just read and they digest the information and they implement it. So I hope they first of all the information that we've shared here, they learn from it and they implement it. Hopefully the information that you have on your website, they learn and they implement from it, you know? So thank you very
Mhm.
much. Thank you very much, Dirk.
No, my pleasure. And I should thank you for giving me the opportunity. And in this conversation, again, I have gained a lot of respect for what you're doing, Semanya. It's unbelievable. I wish you best of luck with your endeavors. And knowing or having heard what you told me, I know that you will be successful. So I'm very wishing you the very best in your in making your vision become a reality.